Hello everyone, my name is Megan Pekarik, and today I'm going to talk about how to use Adobe's Delivery API to get data from Adobe Target A/B tests. This was necessary for the web app I'm working on because we wanted to create an A/B test that made some complex changes to the UI and couldn't be done solely using Adobe's VEC. What we've done in the past for tests like this was we had our product manager use the VEC to put a class like Experience A or Experience B on a certain element, and then we would alter some styles based on which class was present. That method was going to be much messier for this specific test since it touched multiple components, so we wanted to see if there was a way to get the user's current experience type in our code. There are ways to get the current experience type on the client side with Adobe Target, but since we have to wait for the experience data to come back before altering the UI, the user sees the default experience briefly before the UI updates, and we want to avoid that content flicker. We are using Next.js for our web app, so we wanted to see if there was a way to get the user's current experience type in our getServerSideProps function for our page. If we could get the data there, we could pass down the necessary experience information to our page and alter certain component props based on that. So what we're going to do today is first, I'm going to show you where to find your client code. I'm going to be doing this on the Adobe Target website, and I'm going to be logged into an approver account. If you have a role that's lower than that, then you might need to work with somebody who has an approver account to get some of this information. Next, I'm going to show you where to get the correct property token for your A/B test. We are going to need the client code and the property token for the API request. Then after that, we're going to set up a form-based Adobe Target activity that sends some JSON for each experience. And then we're going to create a valid API request body, and I'll go through each of the specific fields that are necessary there. And after that, we're going to make a post request in Postman and see the data that we get back for the test. So first off, finding your client code. Here we have a screenshot of the Adobe Target website. I'm in the administration tab up top, and then in the left panel, I'm in the implementation section. And then up in the top block here, we have the account details, and you're going to see a client code there. That's what you're going to want. So you're going to go ahead and copy that down somewhere if you're following along. Next, finding your property token. You're going to be in that same administration tab, but you're going to be in the properties section on the left panel. And you're going to find the property that you want to use to set up your A/B test. And then once you find that, you're going to click on the code button for that property, and you'll see this little script come up. In there, there'll be an @property field, and you're going to want to copy down that value in the same place as your client code because we will need both. Okay, so now I'm in the Adobe Target website, and like I said, I'm logged into an approver account, and we're going to go ahead and create an activity. So I'm going to click on this Create Activity button in the top right corner, and then I'll click on the A/B test option in the dropdown. And then once I'm there, I'm going to click on the Form radio button. That's the activity type that allows us to send data for each experience. And then I will choose the property that I got my property token from. Then I'll click Create. And then once I'm in here, I'm going to go over to Add Experience because I know I'm going to want at least two. Then I'll go back to Experience A, and I will type in whatever I want for this location. You're going to use this in the API request, so make it something easy to remember. I'll just call it Activity Demo. And then if you go to Experience B, you'll see that it's the same. But then you'll go back to Experience A, and in the content section, you're going to click on this little arrow button, and then you'll click Create JSON Offer. And in here, you're going to put whatever JSON you want to send for Experience A. So I'm just going to put experience type A. And then I will copy that. And in Experience B, I'm going to do the same thing. Go to the content section, click Create JSON Offer, and then paste that in, but change A to B. Once I'm done with that, I can go ahead and click Next. And then I'll get to the targeting section, and right now it's set to 50-50. That's default, and that just means that Every user has a 50-50 shot of getting each experience, so if you want that to be different, you can go ahead and edit those numbers. Next, in the goals and settings, there's a bunch of stuff you can do here, but the only thing that's required is your primary goal. And for this demo, I'm just going to say engagement, and then I'll say time on site. And then after that, I'll click save and close. And then you gotta name the activity. So I'll just name it activity demo. And then click save and close. And then that's going to take a bit to save and sync our activity. We're gonna wait for it to sync up here. And then once it's synced, we have to try to make it live. So we'll go into this little drop down that says inactive and click activate. And that's going to make it so that we can get data from it when we make calls. So now that it's live, we're going to go into Postman. And here we have a post request set up, and I'll just go through what the URL needs to be. So we have HTTPS, and then it's going to be whatever your client code is, and then .tt.omtrdc.net, and then /rest/v1/delivery. And then for our query parameters, you'll have a client query param that is going to be whatever your client code was, and then a session ID, which can be any string. We have a visitor ID on our app that we use for that, but feel free to use whatever you want there. And then after that, we're going to create an API request body. So here we have it set up. I'll just go through each of the objects that are necessary here. There's a bunch of different options that you can use. There's a bunch of that on Adobe's website if you want to look at documentation for the optional values. But for the required ones, we have an ID object here and a TNT ID. From what I can tell, it doesn't really matter what the TNT ID is. We just use the same thing as the session ID, and that seems to work well for us. And next we have the context object, and we're using a channel of web. And so that does have to match whatever your property was. The property that I chose is a web property, but there are other options there. It can be mobile, email, and a few other things, but we're gonna stick with web. Next, we have a very important object, the property object, that contains the token field. And the value for the token field will be the property token that we copied down earlier. So next we have our execute object, and that's going to contain an array of mboxes, and an mbox is pretty much just an activity. So you'll see the first object in our mbox array is our activity that we created. So it has the name, which matches the name that we put in our location field on the Adobe Target website. And then it also has an index value, and the index value just has to be unique within the mbox's array. So since we only have one object, 0 will work fine for us. So next, I want to show you before we send this API request what happens when we don't have the property token, because it can be kind of confusing, the response that you get. So if I take it away and click send, we're going to get what seems like a valid API request back, but we don't really get anything useful from it. We just have an mboxes array with the exact object that we sent in. There's nothing useful here for us to use. So if you don't include the property token object or you have an invalid one, that's going to happen. So if we put it back in and we click send, you'll see that we have a lot more useful information here. So we have our mboxes object that we recognize with the index and the name, but now we have this options array. And inside there, the first object, we have a content field, which contains our JSON that we sent over. So you can see that this user got experience A. So we can use that information in our next app, for example, in our get server-side props. We can say, okay, this is experience A, pass that down to our page as a prop, and then we can edit whatever props we need, whatever styles we need using that. So we don't have to use CSS at all for this. And you'll see there's a bunch of other information that comes with it as well. We just use the content field for our purposes, but the rest of it can also be useful to you. So like I said, once you have this running in Postman, you can go ahead and make a fetch call in one of your get server-side props functions, and then you can pass a prop to your page about the current experience type, and then use that prop to alter the necessary components or styles. So that's how you use Adobe's Delivery API to get data from Adobe Target A/B tests. To summarize everything we talked about, you need your client code and property token. You need to create a form-based A/B test and then follow the steps we went over to create a post request to the delivery API. Thank you for listening, and I hope this video helps you out.